In this video, I want to introduce you to the idea that strings are objects or strings as data types and see how they're a little bit different than what we've done with just ints and doubles and that kind of a thing. So let me introduce this by sharing this idea. Strings are objects. They're not primitive data types. Okay? And let's keep going with this idea. Numbers are primitive data types. In other words, if I create a variable of the type int, for example, and I assign it a value of 45, then we all know that what happens is there's a place set aside in memory that's called my number, and it stores the number 45. So anytime in my code where I reference the variable my number, this location in memory is accessed, and 45 is the value that's in that place in memory and is returned back to my code. So this is what we call primitive data types. It's pretty straightforward and things we're pretty comfortable with. But as we move forward in Java, which is an object-oriented programming language, we're going to start talking about things as objects instead of primitive data types. So strings are an object, and let's see what I mean by that. And we'll get more and more elaborate, but to keep things simple for the moment, let's say we create this variable myString, and in it we put this string, my dog likes to sing. Okay? Notice that since I'm creating an object, I have a capital S, as opposed to the primitive data types use the lowercase. And we'll understand this more and more as we go along. Like I said, this is sort of pushing you off the deep end, and we'll make it make more sense as we go along. But once we assign myString this literal string or some type of string, then what actually happens is the object is created, but the variable myString stores a location in memory which is an address of where the object is stored. Okay, I know that was a lot. So myString variable place in memory is not holding myString dog likes to sing. It's actually holding the memory location, the memory address of where this object resides. So myString is an object, and it has in it this value that we gave it. But it also has more. Now remember that my number, all it has is a number in it. There's nothing else to it. But because myString is an object, it has more information that the object knows about. For example, the object myString knows that it has 20 characters in this string. It also can do things. For example, this object can make everything in this literal uppercase. It can do lots of other things. And we'll learn more about objects as we go along, but the idea behind an object is that it has properties, in other words, a value of 20, and it also can do things. And we'll see this more and more as we go along. But what I really want you to get out of this video is the fact that myString is actually holding an address in memory, not the actual string itself. So as a result, if you're doing a comparison in an if statement and you're trying to compare two strings to see if for example, are both my strings my dog likes to sing, you can't compare the two variables with this double equal sign like we've done in the past. Like if you want to do my number and your number, that's not a problem because my number and your number actually hold the value that's in that memory spot. But what my string is holding is an address in memory, and what your string is holding is an address in memory because they're data types objects, string objects, and not primitive data types. As a result, we're looking at memory address, not the actual strings. And so when you're comparing strings, we have to use the equals again. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Let's go back up a slide. As a result, myString can do something else. It can use this equals method, and it can take myString.equals parentheses your string, and this is actually comparing those string values. So now we're comparing the string literals and seeing if they're the same. as opposed to this statement, which is comparing the address in memory of my string to the address in memory of your string. And all that's really doing is saying, are these two the same, pointing to the same object? But this is really important when you're making a comparison, because we're so used to just saying equals equals, and in our case, as we progress forward, that's going to present you with an error. So instead, my string dot equals parenthesis your string parenthesis, and then you could continue on with your condition. So if these two strings are equal, then true will be returned, and you know what to do with that in an if statement. So now we have to start thinking about data types that are objects and not primitive data types.